and welcome to the Tuesday Talk Show with me, your host, Yvonne Gorman from Essential Print Services. The Tuesday Talk Show is powered by my very own business, which is celebrating 10 years in business, which is absolutely phenomenal. This is Series 4, Episode 4 of the Tuesday Talk Show, and I am delighted to have the Dragon Slayer from Derby himself, Ed Hollands. Hello, welcome. How are you today, Ed?
Hi, Yvonne. Yeah, really good, thank you. For everyone who doesn't know, I founded Driven Media nearly 6 years ago today. And essentially what we do, we put your brand onto a truck already traveling around the country.
And how did you come up with the idea in the first place for that,
Ed? Pretty simply, just walking down the road. It happened to be sort of morning rush hour, so about 8:30. I just dropped my now wife at work, and I thought, if I had a business, I'd be advertising on the back of those trucks, because there was, they were blocking the road. There's probably a queue of 100, 200 cars behind them. It seemed like an ideal place to advertise.
And you thought, well, I've got a cunning plan.
Pretty much, and I sat on the road the next day and took down some numbers and rang them up, and one of them said, "You know what? Go for it. Got 100 trailers, got nothing to lose." Sold our first campaign 6 months later, and kind of been reducing that frequency ever since.
Gosh, so what was the very first few steps for the business? So you sat there in the traffic and thought, I've got an idea here. What were the first initial steps to get things up and running?
Did a quick Google to see if I could see anyone who was doing it.
Yeah.
Found a few that were doing it and thought, I can do that better. Because it didn't seem like they used GPS trackers. It seemed that they had no control over their fleet. And I thought, if I was going to advertise, that's probably the first 2 questions I'd ask. And then I realised that they weren't using curtain-sided trailers. And I thought, that why is that reason? Because it was originally so expensive to print on them. But now they're slightly more expensive. But by the time you factor in repairs and renewals, they're about the same price. So I just said, right, I'll give this a go. Let's see if I can find anyone who's interested. Rang a few people up. I started to get some interest, but no one really would go over the line. It's understandable. It's a fairly new medium, and I'm learning all the time. Even now, what I need to focus on, and even now we still have gaps in what people want to know from us.
So, how did you go about finding your first few customers? Do you come from like a long line of entrepreneurs in your family, or what? Is it naturally business a natural thing for you?
I don't think I do. No, definitely mum and dad are not. As far as I know, my grandparents weren't. We do have a tradition of sort of leaving our hometown and moving elsewhere. So I think that might have helped a little bit. But I don't think it runs in my blood. It just was always something I've wanted to do.
So how did you train to be an entrepreneur?
You can't really train. I think you have to have that mindset of, I'm going to just do it. I don't care what anyone says, I'm going to do it. And I think, yes, some people are kind of made redundant or lose their job and they've got no other choice but to make a living for themselves. And I think we could all do it if the situation arose. It's just a lot of the time when you're in a stable job, it's very hard for you to go, I'm going to give this up and go on something that could make me some money or it could make me none. And it is definitely a special type of person that can do that.
And from knowing you, Ed, the passion to get this off the ground is just phenomenal. And going back to sort of how you got here to where you are today, talk about your process with Dragon's Den. For many people watching this, they're in our business community already and will already know your story. But for those who don't, what prompted you? Who put the entry into the TV show? I've got so many questions. What is it like behind the scenes? Tell us about that journey.
So I actually applied twice for Dragon's Den. Once when the business was probably about 3 months old. We hadn't sold anything. We had no idea really if we could actually do it, and didn't hear anything back. And then probably about 12 months later, I think it was probably in 4 networking or one of the networking groups I was going to, someone said, this is the ideal idea that would be great for it. Just put an application in. And I spent probably about 15 minutes doing it one evening. Just 15 minutes. If I get some feedback, great. If I don't, 15 minutes. And someone rang me back couple of weeks later. And essentially they were just checking the application to make sure that what I'd said was actually the truth. I hadn't missed it down or anything like that. So they invited me in for effectively a pitch to camera, where the producers are acting as the dragons, basically to see how I did on TV, make sure I didn't have a resting bitch face or anything like that. And I think I did rather well, because I was invited back about 2 weeks later to actually present to the dragons. Now, what people don't realise is you've got no idea when you're going in. You're told to be at this place for 6 in, and you could be asked to come back the next day and do it all again. So you could sit there for basically 14 hours while they're filming and not face the dragons. So it is a nerve-wracking experience. You've got no idea when you're going to face them. All you can do is just sit there and read your notes. And pray you've brought everything that you said you've brought. Because there is nothing you can do if you haven't. So I was quite lucky. I was the first one in the morning. And what is 15 minutes on the TV is nearly 2 hours in front of the lights and the cameras. And there are lots of times, and I'm so glad they didn't actually publish them, where I've got my arms in weird places and I suddenly remember I'm on camera, so they go straight back down. So it's one of those experiences. It's surreal, but it's very hard to explain, because you are there for basically 2 hours facing the cameras, and even now I can't remember all of it because it is so intense and so fast paced, and the stress, because you're on the spot. It looks like I don't remember my numbers. I didn't know my numbers. I knew my percentages, but they wouldn't accept my percentages, and I didn't realise I couldn't do the maths and the stress. So I think that's definitely a learning point. Always make sure you know the figures, not the percentages. I thought I'd be able to do the maths, but I couldn't.
Not under those circumstances, I'm sure, especially with Peter Jones breathing down your neck. I know that your episode is available on YouTube to watch back, and it's got tons and tons of comments and views on there as well. It must have been a real good show. I remember watching it when it went live, and I think, oh my gosh, he's doing so well. But then Peter Jones gave you a really weird remark, didn't he, about your appearance? I'm not sure why that was relevant. What did he say to you?
So there's several that I can recall. I know the episode I was called the baby-faced entrepreneur, and Peter didn't believe I was over 14, and I think before he said I'm out, he also said I'm an entrepreneur in waiting, whatever that means.
Oh, okay, I'm not too sure, but we'll take it anyway, I'm sure. But that's a fantastic experience, isn't it? And it's really giving you a good stepping stone to where you are today. How have you enjoyed the journey of people recognising you and being asked to do things like this today and doing speaking events? I noticed on your LinkedIn profile yesterday that you've put down that you are a professional speaker now. You're getting lots of bookings.
It's something I've just tried to do, because it's always good to have an alternative income stream. Yeah. And for me, just by talking about what we do, it can give ideas for people to do, because it's one of those advertising mediums that until you either see one of our trucks on the road or someone says you need to look at this, you probably have never thought about it, despite the fact you've probably been driving for 15, 20 years plus. So for me, it's always it's more of a sales and marketing tool than anything.
Absolutely. And you just don't know, do you, who's in that room listening to you?
It's the same thing about networking. You don't know who knows who. So someone in that room can mention it to someone, and that could become a client. Yeah,
absolutely. So I want to dive right into the questions, if that's okay with you, Ed. Over the past year, it's been surreal, hasn't it, to say the least. What have you learned in business and about yourself over the past year?
I mean, there's too many things to count, but I'll try and pick the highlights. I think, if I roll back to nearly 18 months ago, about in March, that despite what I felt myself, there was absolutely nothing we could do to do that, and it took me a few months to get out of my head that there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. We just have to deal with the outcome, and I think I did the right thing. We gave all of our advertisers free advertising. We paid our hauliers as if we were getting paid, which didn't make much sense to my accountant. But our clients stayed with us, and our hauliers are now really trying to deliver for us now when we actually are getting paid for what they deliver.
That's good. Good strategy. What's your COVID keeper? What things did you change during the past year that you're going to keep retain and keep doing yourself?
So about in June or July last year, so pretty much a year ago, I decided that I couldn't really mope around anymore. I had to get, if I was going to do something, I'd do it myself. So there's two things I did. So the first one is I about 3 or 4 times a week I get up extra early and I do about half an hour of exercise, because that really sets you up for the day.
Yes.
And I was definitely starting to put on the lockdown weight, and it's a good way to keep it off. And then also every day I try and walk for 20 minutes, half an hour with my wife, just around Burton, the local area. Because again, it's nice to get out on the countryside. Some days I'm tied to my desk, and other days it's just nice to unwind. If it's been a particularly, I've just been waiting for things to happen. Which, especially in January this year, that's all I was doing, because you can't really do cold calls, and you are waiting for people to say I'm ready, or not ready now, but I want to find out more.
I don't know about you, Ed, during lockdown, doing any sales whatsoever just felt really insensitive. So I just had to stop. I mean, we don't do any cold calls here, but any sort of like selling. So we changed our tone of voice to more of a we're here to help rather than buy this product. And it just didn't feel right. Do it to sell into someone, because you don't know what people are going through, do you, during that time, especially during the height of it.
That's exactly how I felt in March. It was basically a full stop for 3 months. Yeah. And on the 1st of June, which is coinciding with my birthday, I thought, right, I can't do this anymore, because I'm either going to give up now, or I've got to give it my all. And it took about another 2 months for us to get going again. And then we were really queued up for the start of this year, and then the lockdowns were effectively reset to zero. While that is frustrating, there's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to react to it. And I think our clients have been absolutely fantastic. A lot of them have said, I can't renew because of market rates, but I really want to. So at some point we will come back. So we've been able to run a few campaigns, not being paid yet, but the hope is they'll renew. So when they do renew, it'll pay for those.
Just on the fact that they said we'll come back to it at some point, and just hope that it's enough. But yeah, tricky times. So what is, you're thinking about times pre-COVID as well, what is the hardest thing about running your own business?
I think it's got to be wearing multiple hats. Is every day you are sales, you are marketing, you are finance, you've got to be HR with yourself as well sometimes. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's just overwhelming. And I think the best advice I can do is just focus on one thing. So I use a block system. So in my calendar, I blocked a couple of hours to do certain things. Yeah. And if you can do that from the start, so it's usually sales I block in, because that's the thing I don't want to do the most. Because the rest of finance takes 5 minutes here and there, and I'll spend 1 day a week chasing clients. Especially, but we've got quite good clients. Most of them pay on time. A few that just need a nudge here and there. I think that's the only way you can deal with it. If you try and do it all at once, it'll just overwhelm you.
Absolutely. And which leads me on to the next question, actually. Has there been a particular situation where you have felt like so overwhelmed you just can't do it anymore? But more importantly, how did you get out of that mindset? We touched on it just a moment ago, maybe to go out for a walk. But are there any sort of techniques that you use to get yourself out of that funk?
I think it's exactly that. I just take a step back. It could just be someone has just sent an email. A lot of people don't quite realise that I'm the everything, and it's part of the image we put out. We're a team, and in fact we do have a team. I work with a few consultants, so like Selena, who locally does most of our marketing. We've got a couple of people who are doing sort of commission-only sales, and I want to bring into the fold in the future. So we have to look like for everyone, but one inconsiderate email, especially in the morning, can set that day backwards. And if I don't take that step back and think about, could I have avoided it? Sometimes we could have, and it's just unlucky that for whatever reason the haulier couldn't give us the trailer, or I spent a bit extra because it's something I couldn't control, or I made an error. I think it's just stepping back, learning from it, and taking that breather. Because if you dwell on it, that's your day gone, basically.
Absolutely. I've definitely been through those times myself. I don't get, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but there's not many competitors in your direct field of industry. But looking at your industry as a whole, or your business, Ed, what one thing would you change and why, if you really could? Wave a magic wand and go, right, I'm going to change that. What would it be?
So early pioneers in my industry didn't have all the technology we've got now, and they unfortunately bought a reputation of not delivering what they said. So if I could change that, it would be that, because I'm tarred with the same brush, even though I can actually prove what we're delivering. And we are slowly breaking through at the minute, but it just makes things a lot harder when people have had that experience before and are unsure, especially considering we're the premium player in the market, because we can deliver that accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool, actually, going back to tech. So we've talked about the hard stuff. Let's go back to the positive. What's the good stuff about running your own company? Why should people do it?
I don't think there's any greater feeling when you're told, especially when you're told you can't do it, when you actually make it happen. So that there have been some times when some people really close to me have said, just stop. It's not working. It's worthless. And I've kind of taken it to heart and gone, I'm going to prove you wrong now. And I'm still here, despite COVID, which a lot of people have put them right on the edge. And we went into that pandemic in a really, really bad way, and we've come out so much better because we took that time to look inwards and see what we could change and see what we could improve. And I think that's while running a business can be insanely stressful, the happiness it gets you when things go well and you actually deliver, you actually delight someone, there's no greater feeling than that.
Yeah, it's a real thrill for me anyway, when I've just done what I think is the standard and I've done my job, and then a client comes back and says, that was amazing, the service was incredible, the product looks amazing, thank you so much for your help. And I'm like, oh, I was just doing what I do. And like, oh yeah, we do go above and beyond. So yeah, it just reminds you, doesn't it, the reason why you're doing it, for sure, and puts that fire back in your belly. You mentioned improvements there, Ed. I mean, how hot are you on your own personal development? Are you into any books at the moment? Any Audible books? Any courses? What do you do to make sure you're constantly improving?
So I should be reading more, and I haven't been reading for a while because I've been so focused on.
Hold on a minute. Why do you say should be reading more? Who says we should be doing these things?
I think I've always been a good reader. So even if it's fiction or fantasy, I always like having a book. Problem is, I read them so quickly. So I think it's one of the things I think I need to work on is I need to be getting a book regularly and reading it, even if it is nothing to do with business, because it's one of those things to relax and unwind, and it's to give alternative viewpoints. I love discussing things with people. So at the minute we're looking at hiring again, and while I could just do what we did before, but it hasn't worked. So what can I do? What are other people doing? What are other people doing differently? What can I try differently? And it's given me some great ideas. And I think I spent nearly an hour yesterday just literally sitting there going, if I was to do this again, what worked last time and what didn't? And I think really that reflection, that helps.
That's a really good idea, absolutely. The E-Myth book by Michael Gerber, I'm not too sure if you've read that, but there's an organisational chart in there, which I did before, just after I started the business, when it was just me, just to go, right, in the ideal world, who do I need to sit in these seats? And that would give me a really clear picture on who I wanted in the business, which was really, I'll put that in the show notes, people listening and watching this. And also a reminder that people listening and watching this live or on catch up, we'd love to hear from you. I completely was engrossed there with talking to Ed that I completely forgot to remind people to send in their comments and questions. We would love to hear from you. If you're watching this on the Tuesday Talk Show YouTube channel, make sure you press the subscribe button to make sure you're alerted to the next time we go live. But going back to Ed Hollands from Driven Media UK, what have you become better at saying no to?
I think when you're running your own business, saying no is one of the hardest things to say no to, and especially the first few years of business, it feels almost impossible because you need the money. I've become so much better at sort of seeing when people are not really wanting in truck advertising, they're just sort of seeing what they can get away with. So I've become a little bit better on saying no, especially when people are just wanting a discount for a discount's sake. But because ultimately, if I say yes, that's money out my own back pocket, really. Occasionally I might do it, especially if people are, if they're a startup themselves or they want to try it, but they're very clear that when they acquired their budget was this, and I know that full wrap will go distance because it's a gamble for me. But I think long run, if I do that now and it works, they'll be buying 2, 3, 4 in the future, and that'll far more make up for the discount I gave out now. Whereas people who just want a discount, you end up just giving it away eventually.
So you're sort of weeding out people who are genuine to those who are maybe not so genuine. That's quite a skill in itself, I'm sure. So many people watching this, Ed, will already have their own businesses, but I'm sure there'll be some people who are thinking about taking the leap of faith or starting or growing a side hustle. What advice would you give someone wanting to start their own company?
Start with your customers. If you've got a service you want to offer, speak to people who you think might be interested. What do they want to see? What do they want to get out of it? What do they want to pay? If you can actually deliver all 3 of those, then there's customer number 1, and that should mean you've got a business if it was that easy. I think there's a lot of businesses that, especially unicorn businesses, that just chuck money at an idea and hope it works. Whereas we're a small business, every penny really does count. I spent 6 months doing the wrong thing with mine, and it is such a, oh my god, I've done donut. But start with the customers, because if you that's where the cash is. If you can get customers on board, if you can make it work, and you can get 1 to 10 on, what's stopping you to get 11 to 20 and then 20 to 100? So I'd definitely start with customers. Potential customers, sort of homing what your offer is.
Do you think that people maybe getting stalled on wanting perfection before they launch their business? Do you ever see that with your colleagues and other clients?
Absolutely. You just have to give it a go. Like when we got our first sale, I had no idea if we could actually deliver it. So it was a bit of a put in the dots, really, as I knew certain elements, but I didn't know all of it. So I just ordered stuff and then prayed that it all came together. And aside from me botching a measurement, it came together quite well. If you know anything about trucks, there's a little bit at the bottom. I can't remember what it's called now. I think it's a pelm, and I measured to the top of the pelm and the bottom of the pelm. So there's a 4-inch gap that the curves didn't fit. So luckily, because they folded them back to create a wear band, just unfolded it and it fitted.
But lesson learned. Lesson learned, absolutely, for sure. Ed, what does your business look like once it's done? Do you have like an end goal and vision in mind?
Not really. Funny enough, that's one of the things I'm going to map out in the next few weeks. So I can't say yet, but there is a major event coming. But once that's gone, we can plan the next steps and what we want to look like in 3, 5, 10 years.
Well, make sure you keep posted on the Tuesday Talk Show about any developments that are coming up in the near future. Absolutely. So, Ed, you mentioned that you're not a natural. You definitely are a natural entrepreneur because you've got to here to where you are today, but you're not necessarily a business person. You're learning a lot on the job. What resources? Where do you go to? Who do you go to for advice and information about business?
When I started, it was Mr. Google, as we all do. It's just, I think the best advice I can do is just pick up the phone. You'd be surprised when I rang a curtain supplier and says, "This is my idea. How do I order curtains?" And they'll be more than happy to walk you through what they need, what they can help with, because for them it's a sales opportunity. But equally, we've had people call in to us that said, "I want this," and I'm like, "I think you mean an ad van, not a truck. Talk to these 3 companies, because if you can point people in the right direction, it makes me feel good, and they're like, oh my god, thank you, because
Yes.
you know, especially if you're not in the industry to start with, it's very hard to know all the lingo. I mean, we only figured out the last week that when we say reach, we actually mean impact when we talk to agencies.
Yes.
So it's simple things like that, but if people don't tell you, you've got no idea. And certainly as you grow your network, just ask questions. You know, I've got two really strong pillars in my business now that I talk to almost daily. They're both in Derby, funny enough, but they've been absolute rocks when things have not been going to plan.
Absolutely, grow your network. Top tip for anyone wanting to start their own business, for sure. As we're hurtling towards the end of this episode of Tuesday Talk Show, what's on your bucket list? What would you like to do, Ed? I mean, you've got loads of time in your life to do stuff, but what's on your bucket list? What are you eager to do?
Probably travel more is one of the things that because I've always run my own business like straight from university. I never had the time to go and explore countries. So I'd like, you know, as Driven Media grows and can actually be without me for a few weeks, I'd like to actually, you know, do 2 weeks in Australia and go back to America, do all the things that, you know, I haven't been able to do when I was younger.
Younger and the pandemic as well. So a lot of people have answered travel on the Tuesday Talk Show recently. There's definitely a theme there. It's been absolutely wonderful, Ed, to catch up with you. I know we know each other out of the series anyway, but it's been really great to catch up with you and have a bit of a one-to-one and ask you things I won't necessarily talk to you about in real life. So that's been really fab. So, Ed, tell people where can they find you if they want to get involved with, want to ask you a question about something you spoke about today, or want to know more about Driven Media UK. Where can they find you?
The best place to go would be our website, which is DrivenMedia.co.uk.
Fantastic. Are you on LinkedIn as well?
Yeah, all of our social medias are Driven Media UK, or at Driven Media UK, I should say.
Fab. Excellent. Nice and easy. I like that. So I'm going to wrap up the show, Ed. I'm going to come back to you in a moment to give us your final thoughts. So this is Series 4, Episode 4 of the Tuesday Talk Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, there are loads more available on the Tuesday Talk Show YouTube channel. Make sure you press the subscribe button to be notified about any more live episodes. There's some playlists on there about for my favourites, so check them out. Give them a like, give them a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So Ed, from Driven Media UK, what is your final thought?
When things seem the darkest, it's often when dawn breaks.
Oh, wow.
I just love that quote. When things are not going well, it seems really bad. It's often when things look up.
Gosh, that is deep, Ed. I was not expecting that. That's wonderful. It's giving me goosebumps. Ed, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. We're going to say bye to everyone watching this on live on Catch Up, and we'll see you next time on the Tuesday Talk Show. See you later.